looks like there's more trouble for the turtles. Here's your look at the NECA Toys Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Dirtbag and Groundchuck. After being accidentally exposed to radioactive ooze, 4 ordinary household pets are transformed into a band of wisecracking, pizza-loving, villain-dicing adolescent reptiles. Meet Leonardo, the super-cool sword-wielding leader, Raphael, the hothead hurling manhole covers and one-liners in rapid succession, Donatello, the brain behind the brawn, and Michelangelo, the ice cream pizza gobbling party animal. Whether it's facing fierce enemies or saving humanity from near extinction, with the guidance of their sensei, these heroes in a half-shell are always ready for straight-out-of-the-sewer action. Before we have to contend with this terrible team-up, I'd like to first thank the folks over at NECA Toys that provided this sample of the brand new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Dirtbag and Groundchuck that we could have a look at in this review. Let's get some measurements out of the way. I'm going to grab my ruler here. I'm going to put it right to the top of Dirtbag. Dirtbag is the shortest of the 2 figures. And if I'm looking at this correctly, the figure's around 6 inches or about 15 centimeters in height. Now let's move it over to Groundchuck. Pardon my arm as I'm doing this. The figure goes to about 7 inches, give or take, which translates to about an 18 centimeter tall figure. I'm sure size comparisons may also be helpful, so let's bring in a couple of figures now for some comparisons. Here's what they look like to a regular Ninja Turtle. This happens to sadly be Michelangelo. Poor Michelangelo is sort of going to be outnumbered here. We can also bring in a regular foot soldier. Let's as well bring in Bebop. And of course, if you're going to bring in Bebop, you're going to have to bring in Rocksteady as well. And let's also just bring in Krang. I'm not really sure where Krang's other arm is, but you can see while looking at them, Groundchuck is about the same height as Rocksteady. Again, give or take. He's also about the same height, give or take, to Bebop. And when we're looking at Dirtbag, Dirtbag's about the size of a foot soldier, when of course you factor in his helmet. Both the figures really do get a lot of accessories, though Dirtbag does get the most of the 2. When we in fact look at the accessories first for Dirtbag, and then we'll have a look at the figure itself. This might be also the only time in a review that I continue to call someone a dirtbag. I think growing up I probably called people frequently dirtbag. I don't think that's something we really can call people anymore. Dirtbags. Anyways, though, looking at the accessories that come included, it's not necessarily dirtbags, but it's one certainly that can be shared between the 2 figures. They come in a little tracking device. I think this is Donatello's, in fact. It is nicely detailed. Something you will want to be careful of is this little nib that sticks out the top. And you can see, like with other accessories we've looked at in the past, the bottom is much more darker than it is to the top. I do like the way they've outlined each of the buttons as well as the little, I guess, reed down below there. And this, of course, can be held in their hands. One other accessory that comes included with Dirtbag is it comes included with his blaster. Now, the thing about the blaster is you will want to be worried about this part right here. This little clip that sticks out. So of course, when it comes that time to put this into his hand, just be careful you don't accidentally clip this. It's not even a softer plastic either. It's pretty rigid plastic, so guaranteed like that, it probably will snap on you. It's a very nicely detailed looking blaster like the one he has in the cartoon. And of course, he has suitable hands for the job as well. Speaking of things that can be held in his hand, he also comes included with his shovel. And the shovel, though mostly just painted in white, at least they've gone the extra bit to paint a little bit of the outline of where the shovel head attaches to the rest of the handle. They've afforded some additional black to that. And you can see they've added some additional red on the end of it as well. Nice looking shovel. I think by far my favorite thing that comes included with Dirtbag, though, is his drill. Not only is it painted nicely, sort of hypnotic looking at the drill bit like this. Not only, like I said, is it painted nicely, but it can actually be held in both his hands. I'll show you guys that also in a second. I guess speaking of which, the figure does come with a lot of hands. Right now, in the sockets of his forearms, kind of really uninteresting fists. I mean, fists are fine and good, just not really great for when it comes to holding accessories. He does come with a couple of gestured hands, which I guess we can look at first. And those are very nicely painted. I like the color that they used for his fingerless gloves. Everybody was wearing fingerless gloves. I love that song. And he also comes with a pair of gripping hands. providing I can actually pick them up. Now, these hands are not only suitable for holding the shovel, not only suitable for holding the tracking device, but most suitable for also holding the drill. What you can do is go ahead and just hold onto the forearm and just wiggle the hands out of their sockets. Pretty easy, actually, to replace the hands on Dirtbag. And do the exact same thing on the other side and just replace those hands. Again, super, super easy. No paint buildup either. Sometimes that is a problem when it comes to peg joints. But it seems like the end of that, maybe the paint's already chipped off. It's super easy, though, nonetheless, to replace those hands. And then from there, just bend the elbows. You may already see where this is going to be going. Bend the elbows. And sort of just bring them close enough together that you can then take the handles of the drill and fit them on both sides. Sort of meet things in the middle. There we go. And you actually have Dirtbag holding the drill weapon. I think that's really cool the way that they've done that. So much so, again, that's probably going to be the way I'm going to display it. The figure has actually one other trick up its sleeve. And actually just before we do that, technically one other accessory he comes with is his backpack. The backpack isn't removable, but what neat feature about it is that you can open it up. It doesn't give you much space really to work with. It's generally quite the soft plastic. I mean, you could put like the tracking device in there if you wanted to. Just be careful of that little nib. Yeah, that's going to get, so you can get that in there. And I guess technically you could almost get his blaster in there as well. But again, just be careful of that little clip. I'm a little more comfortable with the idea of putting the tracking device in there than I am actually the blaster, because I think, again, that's going to probably break if I try to fit that in there. But the very idea that he actually has a backpack that you can open up and serviceable for things to hold inside, I think is a nice touch on NECA's part. The last thing that he comes included with involves me having to rip the figure in half. It's not normally something I would encourage here on this channel, but you can take the top half of Dirtbag and remove him from his lower half, freeing his legs and allowing them to go wherever they want. The figure also comes included with this. Now, this is really interesting. This kind of reminds me of the Robbie robots that we looked at earlier here on this channel. You can take Dirtbag and you can lodge him in there so it looks like he's actually emerging from a drilled hole in the ground. How cool is that? I mean, this certainly would prevent me from having... I guess I could actually put the drill in his hand like he's just finished drilling the hole. But that also might be one way to display the figure as well. The only, of course, downside to displaying the figure with only half of his body on the shelf is then trying to figure out a reason or a place that you can then deal with the other half of his body. Anyways, let's take the two halves and put them together. Is this more of a magic trick than anything else? The two joints, or I should say the one ball joint, is pretty easy to put back into the sockets. If you have any issues, by the way, they're removing the torso the first time, maybe just kind of submerge the bottom half in hot water. You could also take a few passes with the hairdryer just to soften up the plastic a little bit. It might make things a little easier when it comes to yanking him in half. Getting now a closer look at the figure. Though he really wasn't in much of the cartoon, to be honest, Dirtbag for me and Groundchuck stand out as real notable characters for me. I really like the design of them. He's very colorful as well, though most of his costume, his costume is kind of green, orange, and then strangely pink. I don't think it's really a color that complements the rest of his costume, but like the rest of his body is this really cool fur gray. And they've also, like in other cases before, darkened the colors here, kind of so the back end of it, where all shadow would be hitting it, where the light, of course, would be hitting at the front, all the back here is all dark. So that continues the trend here with Dirtbag. He has his tail. There's some possibility on the tail. I was surprised that the tail didn't require assembly when we got the figure first out of the packaging. Normally, when it comes to tails, Triceratons, for example, you had to add the tail after the fact. I think Leatherhead also had that as well. But yet, surprisingly, Dirtbag didn't need it at all. It was already attached. A great looking head sculpt as well. Not only do you get the benefit of the additional sculpted in fur, but a very animated looking face. Outlined the eyes nicely in black, with the pupils done as well on the inside. Now, his hat isn't removable, the helmet. It's molded permanently to his head sculpt. He does actually have an open and closed mouth. And in both the cases, when you have it closed or you have it open, it looks like the head sculpt was always supposed to look like that. I mean, even when you close the mouth, for a second looking at it, I didn't think the mouth was even something that could open up until, peekaboo, I see you. You can see the tongue painted nicely on the inside there as well. For the articulation here on Dirtbag, now his head rotates back and forth. it's a little stubborn when it comes to moving it up and down. In fact, you're really not going to be able to get much mileage out of that at all. The arms hinge out at about, I would say, almost 90 degrees. That's about 90. We're going to give it for 90. We're going to give it for 90. We're going to give it for 90. All right. You can also rotate the arms all the way around. The figure has a double hinge on the elbow. And the figure also has rotation in the hands. Sometimes, yes, the hands do pop out, but at least that they're pegged in place, they're pretty easy to put back in place. You can also hinge them back and forth that way too. Upper torso is on a ball joint. You already saw how things connected together. You can split the legs out, forward and back on the legs. He has a double hinge on the knee. I love the ripped hole on the one pant. That's nice. I like the way they've done that. Figure has no articulation here, at least on the boot. Now again, one side is going to be the boot, the other side isn't, but basically the foot articulation and the knee articulation is going to be identical. You have an ankle pivot, you have a hinge up and down, and then on the boot side, same idea. You're just rinsing and repeating, although you have a lot more clothing to work with. And of course, the figure also has tail articulation. So that is Groundchuck. That's not Groundchuck, sorry, that's Dirtbag. We're moving on to Groundchuck. Dirtbag, nice looking figure though. Really like the way he turned out. And I also like the idea as well that they incorporated this ring of dirt that you can actually have him coming out of. Now it's on to Groundchuck. First, his accessory we'll have a look at is his little bull blaster. That's not actually the name it's given, but it certainly is a bull blaster with bull horns on the front, the little ring in the front, and also even has a rattlesnake rattler on the back. I think that's really cool the way they've done that. It's certainly one of the more creative-looking blaster pistols that we've gotten with the turtle figures. And of course, this doesn't fit into his hand just yet, because again, he's got the boring closed fist when you get the figure first out of his plastic prison. But rest assured, NECA Toys got you covered. They give you a bunch of relaxed hands. And again, the detail work on both of these hands, fantastic. You know, there's something to be said about this animated line that NECA continued to do for the Turtles. I mean, just the stuff looks like they're pulled from the actual episodes. And again, we're only talking about the hands just now, but of course, when we look at the rest of the figure, he's a very colorful looking chap. He does come, of course, did I just call him chap? He comes also included with a bunch of grabbing or gripping hands. Of course, suited for holding the blaster. And again, we'll do the exact same thing, picking the figure up. Let's maybe grab it from this side, yanking that off and replacing the hand with the hand that we want to use. And then with these, I find like the plastic is much softer. It seems over the years while NECA Toys have been producing these figures, I find like they're using softer and softer plastic for the hands. And that's really beneficial because it helps to really bring those fingers away from the palm to actually be able to get weapons in their hands without having to fight or running the risk of breaking things. You can see that there's the blaster in his hand. And we'll go ahead and just take that out for the time being, just because it makes things a lot easier to gain access, certainly when it looks at the articulation of the figure. But before we get down to the articulation, let's have a good look at Groundchuck. You know, honestly, I'm having a tough time thinking which one is my favorite of the two. Dirtbag is neat, but I got to say, like, there's a lot of color going on here for Groundchuck. And in cases like this, clearly looking at a figure like this, I can't think that they'd be able to use this mold again. When I say they, I'm talking about NECA Toys. I can't imagine that they'd be able to use this mold again for another release. So it's a sort of a case that we're one and we're done, and then we can't use that mold again. So the cost involved of producing a brand new tool from scratch, this mold is quite expensive because, again, they're not going to be able to get much more mileage from it. Again, it even makes me more appreciative of the fact that they're continuing to put out as many turtle figures as they are. Now, similar to Dirtbag, Groundchuck actually does have an open and closed mouth. It's less easy to get his mouth open. I mean, that's to the extent of what you can actually get. But when opening it, not only are you presented with a bunch of teeth underneath there, but also a nice tongue. I'm not sure why the teeth on the top aren't outlined in black, and yet the ones on the bottom are. I guess it's for the fact that they didn't want to have too many black panel lining happening there in the mouth, because maybe, I don't know, it may look too busy. But I did notice, though, that the bottom of the teeth are outlined black, and yet the top, strange. The head sculpt is fantastic, though, on this guy. Spin this around from the side so you can sort of see he's like a cybernetic bull. So one side of his head is metal, as you can see right there. And he does have the little scope. And then the other side is just his regular head sculpt. But like when we looked at Dirtbag, there's a lot of really elaborate looking fur that they've sculpted on the body. This one also does have the little foot logo there on his bicep. I think that's a fun touch as well. He's, again, a very, very colorful looking character. Now, one side of his body, one side, as you can see, has the robotic elements, and then the other side is basically just like plated armor. Now, with here as well, because they're only using just the white paint, they've outlined it nice enough, and then they've also added the dark shadowing. It's not too stark of a change either. I mean, even though it's a gray and yet the one side is the one white, I mean, looking at it, it's not in your face shadowing. And in fact, actually, I think it works quite well for Groundchuck here. He's also got it on this side of his body too, where all the back side, basically you could just run a straight line all the way down. I wouldn't do that because it would just block the view if you guys actually want to see the figure. But like if I was to follow an invisible line straight down, you can sort of see where one side is shadowed, the other side isn't. The only part that actually isn't correctly lined up is the part of his thigh. And I guess you could kind of rotate that just a little bit, rotate this part to kind of line things up a little bit more. There we go, right there. But yeah, I'm really liking the look of Groundchuck quite a lot. I don't know. I'm not sure really which one I prefer of the two. But we can certainly, in the meantime, while I'm digesting that, we can have a look at the figure's articulation. So his head does, again, rotate back and forth, similar to Dirtbag. Head looks up just only a little bit, and head looks down just also a little bit. You can also open the mouth, but we've already talked about that earlier. Not by much, though. That's it. That's it. The arms hinge out. And again, it's not me. It's a little tight on Groundchuck. I can get maybe about a 45-degree angle bend. I think if I soften that up just a little bit of force, a little bit of persistence, it's about 90 degrees. Now, I normally would not have done that if there was reluctancy to that joint. Like if the joint didn't seem to want to move, I would stop immediately. I wouldn't force the situation for the risk of potentially breaking that. But I knew that it was giving way. I was able to rotate that out or hinge that out. Now the arm does rotate all the way around. One good thing that benefits the figure is that the top shoulder area here is softer plastic. So when it comes to rotating his arm, his shoulder gets out of the way of things. Has a little bit of give. He does have a bicep swivel. He does have a double hinge on the elbow. Again, sometimes the hands pop out. Just pop those back in. You can rotate them all the way around. Well, actually, one thing. I'm going to sidetrack myself talking about the articulation for a second. I'm going to go back quickly to the hands. One thing I've also noticed about maybe not just NECA turtle stuff, but lately I've noticed that NECA seems to be shortening the pegs. Am I the only one that notices that? They seem a little bit shorter. I'm wondering the reasons why they've done it is certainly to prevent these pegs from these posts on the end from breaking. Because I've noticed on both the cases of Groundchuck and Dirtbag that the hands are super easy to remove. I don't know. Am I the only one that sees that? Anyways, going for the rest of the articulation, the upper torso is on a ball joint. There is no waist swivel. The legs can split out. Little loose, just a tad loose here on Groundchuck, but at least you can move the leg forward, back. Swivels at the top where that's attached. Double hinge on the knee. Love that knee pad that they've given him. And he also has the articulation on the foot. Now, despite for the fact he does have hooves as opposed to feet, the hooves actually can rotate or hinge back and forth, that ankle pivot. So he's got it where it counts. Great looking figures, though. A welcomed addition to my growing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures that NECA Toys put out and continue to put out. This is something, again, we have to really stop for a second and realize. NECA Toys is continuing to put out cartoon tied-in characters. And it's not always just the A-list, B-list, C. It's the characters that may appear only for one episode alone. And yet you have a company like NECA being loyal to the brand of the Turtles, that we are getting the likes of Dirtbag, and we are getting the likes of Groundchuck. Characters that may have not made many appearances, at least in the original 80s series, but characters at least from maybe as an 80s kid like myself, you remember. It's again the idea that we're getting cartoon tied-in characters that look like their cartoon counterparts. Just continue to do what you're doing, NECA, because I'm loving this turtle line so far. When the opportunity is there, NECA, yes, does reuse molds when it's available. I mean, cases like the Predator and Alien figures, you gotta believe like a lot of times those molds get reused when they can for future releases. But short of just like the Turtle Brothers, this is something we've talked about before on this channel, short of maybe like the Ninja Turtles themselves, a lot of characters are usually single mold releases only. I mean, like when you're looking at a case of even just the back of the packaging for Dirtbag and Groundchuck, Dirtbag, Groundchuck, Chrome Dome, Wingnut and Screwloose, a future release, and Mondo Gecko and Kerma, Can you think of any other time where they'd be able to reuse that mold? I mentioned in the Chrome Dome review that maybe, yeah, they could release it down the road in a chrome finish. But other than that, I can't think that what they would be using these molds for future NECA releases. So again, the fact that the company like NECA continues to put out as much as they do for the Ninja Turtle fans out there, for figures that, again, made 1 appearance, 2 appearances, 3 appearances at tops, the fact that they continue to release figures like this with molds that they can never really use again shows the loyalty that this company has in the brand. And for fans of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 80s cartoon, I mean, we are having some of the best stuff we've ever gotten for turtle figures coming from NECA. The very idea that we're having a discussion about Dirtbag and Groundchuck, and I mean, how many times have I probably said Dirtbag in this review? But the very idea that we have figures based on these 2 characters, not the most well-known of characters either. The very idea that we're getting a 2-pack release of this just again shows the fact, the commitment that NECA has for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle brand. Again, a big thank you, though, to the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the said sample of Dirtbag and Groundchuck that we had a look at in this review. I'm still not sure which one is my favorite, honestly, of the 2. Groundchuck's got a lot of good coloring for him, but I kind of digging Dirtbag here. Maybe it's just because I like saying Dirtbag because it's been so long. I'm going to have to now just go out somewhere, not a random person. You wouldn't do a random person, but maybe someone I know. I'm just going to call them up one day and say, hey, Dirtbag. And they're going to say, wow, I haven't even used the term dirtbag in like forever. And I know I'd be like, yeah, me too. And then we realize why we're such close friends. But again, a big thank you though to the folks over at NECA for providing the sample of Dirtbag and Groundchuck that we could have a look at in this review. Have you picked up these figures for yourself? If you have, let me know down below, or just based on this review, which is your favorite figure that we looked at? Is it Dirtbag? Is it Groundchuck? It's a tough call. Certainly what I hope isn't a tough call, that if you're enjoying the content you've been seeing here on this channel, how's that for a segue? That you make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, that you're turning on the bell notification, and that making sure you're coming back, because we are going to be looking at more NECA reviews lined up and coming your way. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.